The Kari vessel, Gentle Dawn, tumbled through the void, trailing fire and frozen atmosphere. Inside, Captain Velshaw pressed her trembling hand against the communications panel one last time. Her ship was dying, her people were dying, and the hunters were closing in. "This is the Gentle Dawn to any who can hear," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We are unarmed. We carry refugees, children, elders, the wounded. We meant no harm. We cross no boundaries, but they hunt us anyway. Please, if anyone is listening, please help us." The message scattered across the galaxy like seeds on the wind. It reached 100 worlds, 1,000 stations, and almost everywhere it met the same response: silence. The Galactic Council convened in their gleaming tower, light years away from the carnage. Ambassador Thexelon of the Vin Collective folded his forearms and spoke in measured tones. "The Kari situation is tragic, but intervention would violate Protocol 17. We cannot risk conflict with the Crowith Pax over a single refugee ship." Around the council chamber, heads nodded. Voices murmured agreement. The mathematics of galactic politics were cold and clear. One ship, 300 souls, against the wrath of an entire predator species. The equation did not balance. The feed from the Gentle Dawn played on the central screen. Carrie children huddled in corridors, their large eyes filled with tears. Elders sang soft songs of farewell. The ship shuddered under another plasma strike, and the council looked away. "Motion, to observe and document," the Salon declared. "All in favor?" The vote was unanimous. 50 light-years away aboard the Crowith warship Bloodfang, Commander Jargoth watched the same refugee ship on his tactical display. His fangs gleamed in the red battle light of his bridge. Around him, his pack howled with anticipation. "They run like prey always runs." Jargo growled, his clawed hand caressing the firing controls. "Let them broadcast their fear. Let the galaxy hear them beg. It makes the hunt sweeter." The Crowith were apex predators, descended from pack hunters who had conquered their world through fang and claw. They had taken that same savage efficiency to the stars. Their codes were simple. The strong devoured the weak. Mercy was weakness. And the Kari, peaceful, fragile, defenseless, were the perfect prey. "Sir, their engines are failing. His weapons," officer reported. "They will be dead in space within the hour." "Good," Jargo rumbled. "Circle them. Let them watch us. Let them know their end is coming slowly." He leaned back in his command throne, savoring the moment. This is what the galaxy needs to remember. This is the natural order. His fleet of 12 warships moved into position around the Gentle Dawn like sharks circling wounded prey. They did not hurry. They did not need to. The hunt was already won. But the Gentle Dawn's distress signal had reached one more place, one more set of ears. And those ears belonged to Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Retribution, humanity's newest dreadnought. When the message came through, the bridge crew fell silent as Velshia's desperate plea echoed through the speakers. Sarah closed her eyes and saw her own daughter's face, saw every child she had ever known, saw innocence being hunted for sport. "Communications," she said quietly, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "How far?" 48 light-years, Admiral. "At maximum burn, 6 hours. "Navigation," Sarah continued, her eyes opening with fire behind them. "Plot a jump directly into that system. I don't care if we come out of FTL inside their weapons range." Her first officer, Commander Marcus Webb, stepped closer. "Admiral, we haven't received orders from command. The Council hasn't authorized." "I don't give a damn what the Council authorized." Sarah cut him off. The bridge went absolutely silent. "There are children dying out there, Marcus. Children being hunted by predators for fun. And you want me to wait for a committee to debate it?" She turned to face her crew. Every eye was on her. "My grandmother told me a story once, about a time before spaceflight, when humans saw other humans suffering, and asked themselves a question. What would I want someone to do if that was me? If that was my family?" Sarah's hand came down on the command console like a judge's gavel. "We're humans. We're from Earth. A world that tried to kill us every single day until we learned to fight back. We learned to be strong so we could protect the weak. We learned to be fierce so we could stand against the cruel. And we sure as hell didn't claw our way off a Deathworld just to become the kind of people who ignore a cry for help. She looked at each of them in turn. I'm not asking for permission. I'm not debating. The retribution is going. Any ship that wants to follow us is welcome. Any ship that doesn't can explain to their grandchildren why they stayed behind. The bridge erupted, not with doubt, but with affirmation. Engines answering full military power, Admiral. Weapon systems charging. Jump coordinates locked. Around the retribution, the rest of the Terran fleet came alive. Lights blazed across holes. Engines roared to life. Within 3 minutes, 12 human warships were burning across space, at speeds that made other species nervous. Sarah Chen stood at the center of her bridge, watching the stars blur past, and spoke words that would echo across the galaxy for generations. When someone cries for help and we hear them, their nightmare ends, and their enemies. Their nightmare just began. The retribution jumped to FTL, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. The Kraith fleet circled the dying Gentle Dawn like vultures around Carrion. Inside the refugee ship, Captain Vela held a Kari child in her arms, singing the old songs of her people, the songs they sang when the end came. "Captain," her sensor officer whispered, his voice hollow with despair. "They're charging weapons. This is it." Belkia closed her eyes and held the child tighter. At least it would be quick. At least the children would not suffer long. On the Bloodfang, Commander Jargoth raised his claw toward the firing controls. His pack howled in anticipation. This was the moment, the kill, the proof of dominance. He began to lower his hand, and space itself screamed. 12 human ships tore out of FTL space like bullets through paper. They didn't emerge at a safe distance. They didn't request permission to enter the system. They materialized directly inside the Krellith formation, so close that the wash from their FTL drive sent 2 Krell ships spinning. Admiral Sarah Chen's voice cut across every frequency in the system. It was calm, terribly, dangerously calm. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet to Krell vessels. You are targeting unarmed refugees. You have 5 seconds to power down your weapons and withdraw." 543, Jargo snarled in fury. "How dare they?" "We claimed this prey. Fire on the human ships. Teach these upstarts their place." The Bloodfang's plasma cannon swiveled toward the retribution. Sarah never reached 0. "Weapons free," she said quietly. "Show them what Deathworlders do to bullies." The human fleet opened fire, and the Kraith learned their first lesson. Humans didn't fight like the other species. They fought like Earth had taught them to fight viciously, efficiently, without hesitation. The Retribution's railguns spoke first. Tungsten slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed, hammered into the Bloodfang shields. Each impact hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. Krellith shields designed to withstand standard plasma fire shattered like glass under the kinetic assault. "Impossible!" Jargo roared as his ship shuddered. "Nothing penetrates our shields that easily." "They're not using energy weapons," his tactical officer shouted over the alarms. "They're throwing metal." Just metal. But the mass, the speed. Another volley struck home. The Bloodfang's armor buckled. Systems failed. The mighty predator ship that had terrorized a dozen species suddenly found itself fighting for survival. Around the battlefield, the rest of the Quyth fleet fared no better. Human ships moved like sharks, like wolves, like the apex predators Earth had created. They used tactics the Crowith had never seen. Tactics born from a world where everything wanted to kill you, and only the clever survived. The human destroyer, Defiant, executed a maneuver that made Kraith pilots' blood run cold. It dove directly into the firing solution of 2 Crowith cruisers, forcing them to hold fire or risk hitting each other. In that moment of hesitation, the Defiant gutted both ships with precision missile strikes and was gone before they could respond. "They fight like a pack," a Crowith weapons officer whispered in dawning horror. "They coordinate like hunters, but they're so fast, so precise." The human frigate Indomitable showcased another Earthborn tactic, ramming. When a Crowith destroyer tried to flee, the Indomitable burned every reserve it had and slammed into the enemy ship's engines at full speed. Both ships tumbled away damaged, but the Crowith vessel was crippled. The Indomitable was already maneuvering for its next target. On the Retribution's bridge, Sarah watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Target their command ship. I want to talk to whoever thought hunting refugees was sporting. The Retribution turned its full attention on the Bloodfang. Railgun fire, missile salvos, laser batteries that could carve through asteroids. The Kraith flagship's shields failed. Then its armor, then its superstructure, began to break apart. Jargo clung to his command throne as his ship died around him. Fires raged, systems exploded. His pack, his mighty pack, was screaming in terror. The hunters had become the hunted, and they did not know how to cope with it. "Commander, we need to retreat," his first officer begged. "We are Kraith," Jargo roared. "We do not flee from the Retribution's main cannon," spoke. A lance of coherent light punched through what remained of the Bloodfang's armor and severed the ship in two. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. Half of Jargo's crew died in seconds as the void claimed them. Sarah's voice came through the emergency channel. Still calm, still terrifyingly controlled. "You're still alive, Commander. That was intentional. I'm giving you what you never gave the Gentle Dawn, a chance. Order your fleet to stand down now." Jargo looked at his tactical display. 7 of his 12 ships were crippled or destroyed. The humans had lost nothing, not one ship. They hadn't even been damaged. It had been 4 minutes since the humans arrived. 4 minutes. His hand trembled as he reached for communications. "All ships, cease fire. Cease fire and withdraw." "Smart choice," Sarah replied. "Now get out of my sight. And Commander, spread the word. Tell every Predator fleet in the galaxy what happened here today. Tell them the humans have a new rule. You touch the innocent. You answer to us." The surviving Crowith ships limped away into the dark. On the Gentle Dawn, alarms suddenly stopped wailing. The targeting locks vanished. Belsha looked at her sensor display in disbelief. "Captain," her officer whispered. "The hunters. They're leaving. They're running away." "But who?" Belsha breathed. Her communications panel lit up. A human face appeared. Female. Strong features. Kind eyes that had just commanded terrible violence. Admiral Chen smiled gently. "Gentle Dawn, this is Admiral Sarah Chen. You're safe now. We're sending repair teams and medical personnel. Hold on just a little longer. The nightmare is over." Velshaw felt tears streaming down her face. "Why?" she managed to ask. "Why did you come? No one else would." Sarah's smile turned sad. "Because on Earth we have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We heard you crying. How could we do nothing?" The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire through dry grass. Within hours, every species knew. Every government had seen the footage. Every military had studied the tactical recordings. The humans, those strange newcomers from the Deathworld called Earth, had done the impossible. They had heard a cry for help and answered it alone, without permission, without hesitation. On the Galactic Council Station, emergency sessions convened. Ambassador Thexelon of the Vin watched the battle footage for the 5th time, his forearms trembling slightly. "They arrived in 4 hours, he whispered. "We were still debating committee protocols. They crossed 48 light-years and engaged a Crowith fleet in the time it took us to schedule a vote." The counselor from the Shaheen Harmony spoke next, her voice carrying both awe and fear. "They violated 17 galactic regulations, crossed sovereign space without permission, engaged in combat without council authorization. Technically, they should be sanctioned." "Technically," agreed the representative from the Mexican Concordant. "They also saved 300 innocent lives that we abandoned. Lives we decided weren't worth the political risk." Silence fell over the chamber. It was the kind of silence that came when comfortable lies died in the light of uncomfortable truth. The recordings show Crowith vessels fleeing from them. Another counselor noted, "The Kraith, predators who have terrorized shipping lanes for centuries. They ran away like scared children because they encountered something they've never faced before." Thexelon said quietly. "Not a more powerful predator. Something different entirely. They encountered a species that fights not for conquest or pride, but for others, for strangers." The cry couldn't comprehend it. On the edge of Kraith space, Commander Jargoth sat in a medical bay, his body wrapped in healing wraps, his pride shattered beyond repair. Other Crowith commanders had come to hear his story, to understand what had happened. They should have been easy prey, Jargoth muttered, staring at nothing. Smaller ships, fewer numbers at first, but they fought like I don't know how to describe it. Like predators, another commander suggested. No. Jargo shook his head. Predators hunt for food, for sport, for territory. The humans fought like something we've never encountered. They fought like prey that refuses to accept its role. Like something that has been hunted so long, so hard, that it learned to hunt back. And when they hunt, they don't play. They don't toy with their prey. He looked up at his fellow commanders, and they saw something in his eyes they'd never seen before. In a Crowith, genuine fear. They end you quickly, efficiently, like you're a problem to solve, rather than an enemy to dominate. They showed no joy in combat, no savage glee, just cold, perfect execution. And the worst part, his voice dropped to a whisper. They weren't even trying to kill us. They were trying to save someone else. We were just in the way. The message spread through the Crowith packs, like poison through water. Avoid humans. Never hunt in their presence. Never threaten what they protect. The cost is too high. Aboard the Gentle Dawn, medical teams from the human fleet worked alongside carry healers. Human engineers had stabilized the dying ship. Human supplies had fed the hungry. Human medics had treated the wounded with the same care they'd give their own. Captain Velshaw found Admiral Chen in one of the refugee compartments. The human admiral was kneeling beside a young carry child, showing her pictures of Earth on a datapad. The child laughed at images of Earth's oceans, its mountains, its cities. "Your world looks scary," the child said innocently. "It is," Sarah agreed with a gentle smile. "Very scary. It taught us to be strong, but it also taught us something more important, to use that strength to protect people who can't protect themselves." Vela approached, and Sarah stood to face her. The carry captain held out her hands in the gesture of deepest gratitude, and tears fell freely down her face. "You saved us, not for gain, not for politics. You risked your lives for complete strangers." Sarah took Vela's hands gently. "My species learned something painful over our history. We learned that the cruelest thing in the universe isn't predators hunting prey. It's good people having the power to help and choosing not to. We refuse to be that kind of people. But the cost," Belshaw protested. "The political complications. The risk. How can you justify? How could I not?" Sarah interrupted softly. "Captain, every human on those 12 ships heard your message. We heard you crying for help. We heard children in danger. And in that moment, every one of us remembered that we're human. We come from a world that showed us no mercy. But that's exactly why we choose to show mercy. Because we know what it's like to be helpless, to be afraid, to be at the mercy of something stronger." She gestured to the carry refugees filling the compartment. Children playing, elders resting, families reunited. This right here, this is worth any political complication, any sanction, any cost. Because years from now, when I'm old and looking back, I won't remember committee meetings or regulations. I'll remember that we heard someone cry for help, and we came running. Belshaw pulled Sarah into an embrace, and across the ship, carry and humans mingled. Language barriers fell away in the universal language of gratitude and compassion. Stories were shared, tears were shed, and bonds were forged that would last generations. The Gentle Dawn limped into the nearest neutral port 3 days later. Escorted by the human fleet, the arrival was broadcast across the galaxy. Millions watched as Kari refugees disembarked, safe and whole. Watched as human and carry crew members embraced like family. Watched as Captain Velshaw stood before the cameras and spoke words that would be repeated on 1,000 worlds. We cried for help, and the galaxy turned away. All except one species. The humans heard us, and they came. Not because they had to, not because it benefited them, but because that's who they are. They are the ones who run toward danger when others run away. They are the ones who fight for strangers like they're fighting for family. They are the Deathworlders who carry death to evil and life to innocence." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "The galaxy may fear them, but we will love them forever." In the weeks that followed, something changed in the galaxy. Pirates who once raided with impunity began to hesitate. Predator fleets that had terrorized shipping lanes grew cautious because word had spread. A new factor had entered the equation of galactic power. If you prey on the innocent, if you hunt the helpless, if you ignore the cries of those in need, you might encounter the humans. And if you do, you'll learn what every Deathworld predator eventually learns. There's always something more dangerous. Humanity didn't seek to rule the galaxy. They didn't demand territory or tribute. They simply made a promise, unspoken but absolute. Cry for help, where we can hear you, and we will come. Not with political debates or careful calculations. We will come with fire and fury, and an ancient human rage against injustice. We will come because someone has to, because choosing to look away would cost us something we value more than safety or politics or power. It would cost us our humanity, and that is a price humans will never pay. The Retribution and her fleet departed the neutral port a week later, bound for their next patrol. As they jumped to FTL, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on her bridge and looked at the stars with quiet determination. Somewhere out there, someone might be crying for help. Someone might be afraid, helpless, hunted. And if their cry reached human ears, their nightmare would end, and their enemy's nightmare would begin. Because that's what Deathworlders do. They survive the unsurvivable. They overcome the impossible. And then they use that terrible strength to protect those who can't protect themselves. The galaxy would remember the gentle dawn, would remember what happened when humans heard a cry for help. And in the years to come, that memory would save countless lives because predators would think twice. Bullies would hesitate, and the innocent would know. If you cry for help and the humans hear you, you're already saved. And your enemies, they're already dead.